We have a media blackout on imaginable radiation levels detected at Fukushima. MOX fuel melts through reactor floor. Half-life of 24,000 years. Okay, there are times when I'm convinced humanity is a suicidal cult of complete idiots whose only real achievement is figuring out increasingly obscene ways to distract themselves from reality, while everyone was busy watching Lady Gaga channel satanic symbolism and occult imagery in front of 100 million viewers at the Super Bowl. The Fukushima nuclear accident just got a whole lot worse. Almost no media outlets in the United States even mention the alarming news either. As The Guardian reports, radiation levels has reached what experts call an unimaginable intensity inside the containment structure of reactor number 2, clocking in at 530 sieverts per hour. A sievert is a unit for radiation exposure, and exposure to just 5 sieverts in a short amount of time has a 50% kill rate among humans. When it comes to radiation exposure, the intensity of the exposure, which is the inverse of the duration of exposure, matters a lot. Absorbing 5 sieverts of radiation over a year is not fatal, but exposure to 5 sieverts in just 60 seconds, for example, will almost kill you from radiation poisoning, a miserable way to die, by the way. The levels of radiation measured inside Fukushima reactor number 2 is 530 sieverts per hour, or over 100 times the intensity necessary to kill most humans who are exposed for that for just a short time. The melted fuel rods are generating this radiation and have apparently bored a hole through the floor in the containment vessel, meaning that they are very close to coming in contact with groundwater and ocean water, or may already have struck it. Melting fuel rods is vastly increased in the risk of nuclear fuel criticality, which could explode deadly radioactive elements up into the open atmosphere. Yet nearly the entire mainstream media remains in a complete news blackout of this devastating development that threatens the sustainability of all life in the Northern Hemisphere. I guess I'm talking about Trump's so-called Muslim ban, which is not even a ban on Muslims, is far more important than, surviving the world's worst nuclear meltdown that's nowhere close to being resolved. The same media that called meltdown a conspiracy theory now report this as casual facts. Check out the paragraph from The Guardian, which casually admits that Fukushima facility suffered a meltdown. And here it is. The facility operator, Tokyo Electric Power (TEPCO), said atmospheric readings as high as 530 sieverts in an hour has been recorded inside the containment vessel of reactor number 2, one of 3 reactors that experienced a meltdown when the plant was crippled by a huge tsunami that struck the northeast coast of Japan in March 2011. The reason I point this out is because back in 2011, when the entire independent media was sounding the alarm about fuel meltdown that has often taken place, we were all called conspiracy cooks by the lying mainstream media. Also recall that in 2011 most people had not yet learned that the mainstream media is fake news, so they believed whatever CNN was telling them. Don't worry, it's not a meltdown, it's all under control. Fukushima is no big deal, don't listen to the alarmists. Now, it is almost 6 years later, Fukushima melted fuel rods are obviously not just continuing to pump out radiation, because you cannot change the laws of physics, but something has caused the intensity of the radiation output to suddenly escalate to insane levels. Possible explanation for this include, of course, more fuel rods are being exposed, or fuel rods coming closer contact with each other, amplifying and accelerating the mass to energy conversion. The world's largest dirty bomb just waiting to explode. In effect, Fukushima has become the world's largest dirty bomb, and the remaining fuel rods could explode, achieving critically at any moment. Even right now, the radiation is so intense that robots built to explore the wreckage can only survive for a few hours before their circuits are destroyed. Thus, there are almost no scenario in which Japan, TEPCO, or anybody in the world figures out how to clean up the wreckage, reclaim the melting fuel rods, and re-establish control over the nuclear reactions that is still ongoing. You can't even successfully build containment vessel on top of it all because the melting fuel has already burned a massive hole in the floor and is melting its way into the groundwater. TEPCO also said image analysis has revealed a hole in metal grating beneath the same reactor pressure vessel, reports The Guardian. The 1 meter wide hole, that's 3 feet, was probably created by nuclear fuel that melted, and when it penetrated the vessel after the tsunami knocked out Fukushima Daiichi backup cooling system. Gee, you think? I love how TEPCO and the world's excuse-making media has been lying about Fukushima for so long that it still manages to escape them. Do they think 1 meter hole magically appear in nuclear containment vessel due to a random chance? No, it's melting fuel rods, you morons. And some of those fuel is MOX fuel, which contains plutonium-239 that boasts a half-life of 24,000 years. Someone in the year of 26,000 AD, the Fukushima nightmare will be half as toxic as it is right now. What a wonderful progressive future to look forward to. That's how stupid modern human has become. They aren't destroying life in the now. They are poisoning the planet for the next 500,000 years and calling it green energy, yeah, and biosolids and green fertilizers, right? Given the potential of mass poisoning of the northern hemisphere for the next 500,000 years, what exactly is the Japanese government's plans for Fukushima? Keep lying as long as possible and hope nobody notices? There's also the basic plan for the mainstream media in the United States, which is now populated almost exclusively by brain-damaged idiots who suck down fluoride and mercury flu shots to keep their brains stupid enough to read the teleprompters. The radiation fries the robots in 2 hours, somebody called Superman. A remote-control robot that TEPCO intend to send into reactor number 2 containment vessel is designed to withstand exposure to a total of 1,000 sieverts, meaning it would survive for less than 2 hours before malfunctioning. Robots are effed, in other words, unless you know how to build a radiation-proof robot. There are really no solution found in robotics. Humans are almost instantaneously killed in an environment of 500 sieverts. It's basically like shoving your head into a network of 50,000 microwave oven and set it to fry without wearing sunscreen. The only solution, as it turns out, is something that doesn't exist. Superman. Essentially, TEPCO needs Superman to pull the fuel out of reactor number 2. He can pull it out because, thankfully, Fukushima fuel rods are not made of kryptonite. The problem with this solution, of course, is that Superman is a fictional superhero, not an actual person. I fully realize that fiction never gets in the way of fake science when it comes to covering the ass of the nuclear energy industry, nor even vaccine industry for that matter. But in this case, we can't solve a real problem with an imaginary superhero. Here's how The Guardian waters down this problem and makes it sound like a mild challenge rather than a nuclear holocaust that it actually become. TEPCO and its network of partners companies at Fukushima Daiichi has yet to identify the location and conditions of the melted fuel in the 3 most serious damaged reactors. Removing it safely represents a challenge unprecedented in the history of nuclear power. So wait a second. 6 years into Fukushima, the TEPCO company still can't find the location and conditions of the fuel rods in 3 of the reactors. Please beat your head against the wall right now. Then return to this article. It is the only way to hammer the crazy out of your consciousness. No, seriously, we are 6 years into this disaster. They still can't find the fuel rods. There is 1 meter hole burned into the floor. The radiations level are skyrocketing to unimaginable intensity. The robots get fried in 2 hours. Humans killed almost instantaneously. From what The Guardian concludes that the situation represents a challenge unprecedented in the history of nuclear power. I would say it's more than a challenge. It's basically Fukupocalypse. No one has the solution because there are apparently any solution. But wait, climate change is going to doom our civilization, right? Yeah. The entire babbling idiot media pop drone or endless about imminent threat of climate change. The greatest quack, science hoax and glorious disinformation theatrics ever pulled in the history of our world. According to the climate change lunatics, ocean levels are going to rise over a few hundred years and might cause some coastal cities like New York to become under a couple of feet of water. Wow, that's the crisis, really. Meanwhile, Fukushima is about going supercritical, spewing Mach 30 bomb radiation with a half-life of 24,000 years across the entire northern hemisphere. Yet there isn't a peep about it in the news, morons. Climate change is totally made up. Fukushima is real. Climate change is based on flawed computer models, which are themselves based on flawed assumptions. Fukushima is based on laws of physics and cannot be stopped by legislation or wishful thinking. Climate change says that carbon dioxide, an essential molecule for plant respiration, is evil and deadly. Yet covering up the truth about Fukushima denies the fact that plutonium-239 is 1 billion times more dangerous than CO2 and even far lower concentrations in the atmosphere. Somehow you are being told to be alarmed, horrified and freaked out about non-emergency climate change while remaining completely apathetic about an actual real emergency, Fukushima. We are all trapped in a planet-wide suicide cult run by incompetent morons. It is in this moment like that I have seriously feel like the humanity has become a planet-wide suicide cult run by incompetent morons. If they all want to drink Kool-Aid, that is their choice. But I would prefer they don't take me with them. For my part, I would actually like to live on a planet that isn't contaminated and condemned by plutonium-239, cesium-137, and strontium-90. According to the insanely stupid mainstream media that somehow makes me crazy, but you and I know that conforming to the stupidity of the delusional masses has never been a measure of sanity. There you go. That's the fact. No, the mainstream media is more busy about bashing Trump because the mainstream media are all Democrats, all run by the New World Order system. So they are not talking about Fukushima. And Fukushima, in reality, in the correct, the just right atmospheric conditions, would create the perfect storm, and the entire northern hemisphere would be drowned in plutonium-239, would have a half-life of 24,000 years. Cesium-137, which will replace in your genes the structure of your DNA. And strontium-90, I mean, you're sitting there in your studios and babbling about how bad it is that Trump is going out to play a little golf and taking a little time off, while Mr. Obama has done that for 8 years and you didn't say squat, meaning you are with him and not with Trump, who wants to try and make America great again. And meanwhile, you sit there and babble about Trump, and you don't give a flying F about your own children's future on a planet which is now being condemned by the world's largest disaster in the industrial world. You don't care. You don't even care about your own children. Are you really humans? I have a hard time believing that you are humans. You must be some sort of demon sitting and scooping money in, lying to humanity, telling all sorts of lies of our new elected president, because your little killing machine, Hillary Clinton, didn't get office. Yeah, she is a murderer. Her husband is a rapist and a pedophile and a molester. And you want that kind of people inside the White House? No, we cannot have Trump. We want Hillary in office. We want Trump out, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get him out. Over and out. 100 million viewers at the Super Bowl. The Fukushima nuclear accident just got a whole lot worse. Almost no media outlets in the United States even mentioned the alarming news either. As The Guardian reports, radiation levels has reached what experts call an unimaginable intensity inside the containment structure of reactor number 2, clocking in at 530 sieverts per hour. A sievert is a unit for radiation exposure, and exposure to just 5 sieverts in a short amount of time we have a media blackout on imaginable radiation levels detected at Fukushima. MOX fuel melts through reactor floor. Half-life of 24,000 years. Okay, there are times when I'm convinced humanity is a suicidal cult of complete idiots whose only real achievement is figuring out increasingly obscene ways to distract themselves from reality, while everyone was busy watching Lady Gaga channel satanic symbolism and occult imagery in front of 50% kill rate among humans. When it comes to radiation exposure, the intensity of the exposure, which is the inverse of the duration of exposure, matters a lot. Absorbing 5 sieverts of radiation over a year is not fatal, but exposure to 5 sieverts in just 60 seconds, for example, will almost kill you from radiation poisoning, a miserable way to die, by the way. The levels of radiation measured inside Fukushima reactor number 2 is 530 sieverts, which could explode deadly radioactive elements up into the open atmosphere. Yet nearly the entire mainstream media remains in a complete news blackout of this devastating development that threatens the sustainability of all life in the Northern Hemisphere. I guess I'm talking about Trump's so-called Muslim ban, which is not even a ban on Muslim, is far more important than, I don't know, surviving the world's worst per hour, or over 100 times the intensity necessary to kill most humans who are exposed for that for just a short time. The melted fuel rods are generating this radiation and have apparently bored a hole through the floor in the containment vessel, meaning that they are very close to coming in contact with groundwater and ocean water, or may already have struck it. Melting fuel rods is vastly increased in the risk of nuclear fuel criticality.